I first want to say thank you to PLG 13 for doing this under these circumstances that we're going through. I know it's difficult to do this, and I appreciate you guys giving us the opportunity to give our point of view. The things that I'll do if I'm elected to for Nelson County District 50, if I go to Frankfurt, I will go up and I will vote to create 41 new taxes. I will vote to double the fees you pay at the county clerk's office. I will co-sponsor a bill to raise your gas tax and double your vehicle registration fees. I will vote against a bill to put in God we trust signs in schools. I will sponsor a bill to eliminate the death penalty, even though I know most Republicans are against it, or are for it. I will go on national public radio and criticize President Trump. I will never attend a meeting of the local Republican Party. I will vote to close local driver's license offices here in Nelson County. If the other Republicans in Frankfurt don't vote for my bill to raise your gas tax and double your vehicle registration fee, I will just keep co-sponsoring that bill the next year. I will take campaign contributions from the Kentucky Bankers Association, then give them a $100 million tax break. After all that, I will spend over $300,000 in campaign ads to convince the people in Nelson County that I'm a true conservative. Most of the $300,000 will come from special interest groups such as the Highway Contractors Association, the Bankers Association, Wall Street financiers, and other out-of-state interests. But you see, if Chad Mccoy would have told you that 4 years ago when he first ran, that's what he's done since he's been in office. For 4 years, he has raised taxes, 41 new taxes. He has voted to double your fees at the county clerk's office, even though they are $300,000 surplus generally every year. So the things that I've named are what my opponent has done, and this is why I'm running. The Republican Party passed a resolution condemning Chad's actions back in 2019. And that's why it's time the taxpayers in Nelson County have a watchdog in Frankfurt, and not Mr. McCoy. I'm Don Thrasher, the chairman of the Nelson County Republican Party. I'm a constitutional conservative that will fight for the taxpayers and citizens of Nelson County. I will fight for freedom and liberty because it is overdue for the average person in Nelson County to have a voice in Frankfurt. With your help and your vote, I will be that conservative voice.
All right, Chad. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'm Chad Mccoy. I am currently serving as your state representative, just finishing my second term. I live here in Bardstown, actually live out in the Botland area with my wife, Dr. Holly Mccoy, and our two kids who have gone off to college, but the one blessing of this pandemic is I've got them home right now, so we're actually getting to enjoy some family time having them around. You know, you just heard a lot of stuff over there, and unfortunately not much of it was true, and we'll get into all of that as we go through this. But I want to point out a couple of things about me, because I've got a pretty good voting record that you could look up for yourself. First and foremost, I think the government that governs the best is one that governs the least. I am for very limited government. At the same time, a strong supporter of our constitutional liberties and all of the Constitution. And any time I'm looking at legislation or dealing with things in Frankfurt, I always sort of start from this premise. I want a local solution, if there can be a local solution. If not, then a state solution because I think local is better than state, and I think state is better than federal. I always want us to keep moving down to the local if we can. And so when I approach legislation, no matter what it is, and you can ask the folks in Frankfurt, I always ask this one question: what's the problem we're trying to solve? And then I say, all right, is this piece of legislation going to solve that problem? And is that problem a real problem? Because one of the things you run into is special interest groups like to come in and tell us that they've got a problem and maybe there's not one. So after we've identified a real problem, I then want to see, is there not a way for the local government to do it so that we don't have to act in Frankfurt? And then finally, if not, then we're going to have to do something. The last question is this really good policy? And you've got to think not just immediate, not gut reaction. You've got to look long term and say, all right, if we do X, what will be the ramifications of that as we go forward and on anything else that might come down from Frankfurt? So I'm anxious to get into this debate, talk about the issues, because there's a lot of folks out on the internet that like to spew off half-truths. And tonight you're going to get to hear the whole truth, and maybe we can get around our arms around all of these ideas. So look forward to it. And guys, thanks so much for doing this. Thanks everybody out there for watching. Appreciate it.
And with that, we will get into the first question. I feel like we should probably start this off just by noting the significance of the unique circumstances of this primary race. We have the chairman of the County Republican Party challenging the two-term incumbent state representative. The county party has formally endorsed the challenger, Mr. Thrasher. Mr. Thrasher had previously vowed that he would not run, but after another challenger dropped out, he filed his paperwork. So my first question is going to be a little different depending on who's asking. So please listen carefully. But for Representative McCoy, do you feel that you bear some responsibility for losing support from the most active of Republicans in your party? And why do you think you find yourself facing this primary challenge? And for Mr. Thrasher, did you start off on the wrong foot from the outset of your campaign, essentially breaking your previous pledge that you would not run and then going back on that promise? And that'll be to Representative McCoy for the first response.
So of course, first thing, I take issue with the characterization that I've lost support with the most active Republicans. Don Thrasher has hijacked the local Republican Party along with about 10 of his buddies. And so to say that that is in fact the Republican Party of Nelson County is quite frankly laughable. And that's why we have an election, and we'll find out in a couple of Tuesdays what the Republicans in Nelson County think. The fascinating thing to me though is all of the things where he says one thing but then does another. I'm not going to run, but then he runs. I'm for modernizing the tax code, but then he yells at me for modernizing the tax code. I'm not going to be chairman during the campaign. Well, now I am, and I'm going to use the county's money or the funds to help my campaign. What we see continuously is half-truths, a little bit of truth that gets twisted, and a whole lot of not doing what he says he's going to do. Now, the really interesting thing, though, is this assertion that somehow I'm not a conservative. I've been recognized multiple times at the national level for my conservative voting record. Every single thing that I've done up there has been, I'm in leadership of the party. You can't be more in the Republican Party than what I'm doing. So to say that I'm not Republican or not conservative is just insane. You know, we are modernizing the tax code. We are making Kentucky a better place. We've brought in more investment in the last 4 years than anybody's ever seen in this state. It's been incredible. And here we are right now in the most unprecedented of times. A worldwide pandemic, an economy that is crumbling around us, unemployment at the highest it's ever been in the history of our country, and yet we've got people that are complaining because we talked about gas prices. If we can't have discussions about issues, that's how that process works. And I think at best there's been a misunderstanding of how that process works, and at worst it's just been outright deceit.
And Mr. Thrasher.
Well, I really take exception with what Mr. McCoy just said. First off, he did promise not to support a gas tax when he first ran in 2016. It was on a mailer. You guys even mentioned in the debate with Mr. DeWeese the first time around. He then went against saying, after he co-sponsored a bill twice, he co-sponsored a bill to raise the gas tax and double the vehicle registration fee. He can deny it all he wants, but the record, the legislative record speaks for itself. He can't deny that he has co-sponsored a bill that wanted to raise the gas tax and double vehicle registration fees. At the outset he said he likes to do things local. That was the first thing he said. He likes to keep it local. But yet he voted to close this driver's license office here in Nelson County. I just talked to Jeanette Seibach, the county clerk. She told me, she's like, that we were talking about it, and I said, you know, if I go up there, I'm just trying to keep the office, try to keep an office here. She's like, we would love to have, the county clerk's office would love to have it. We could streamline it because they already do the motor vehicles. She said it would be so useful if we had driver's licenses because it also meshes in with the voter registration. So Mr. McCoy, if everything is local, sir, why did you not talk to our county clerk, Jeanette Seibach, who is doing an outstanding job, by the way? Why did you not talk to her when it came time for, if you're saying it's local, That, sir, is the most local thing. People are upset that they are losing their driver's license office, and you are the one that was pushing for this vote to happen, to make us lose our driver's license office. But if it's local, sir, then it would be up to Jeanette Sidebottom, and you should talk to her. So please don't deceive the people. They're losing their driver's license office in 2022 because of you, sir.
And I'm just going to follow up just real quick, 30 seconds. Mr. Thrasher, if you would address the question that I asked about starting off at the outset of your campaign, where you had pledged that you would not run, but then you did. If you could just 30 seconds to
Yes, sir.
clarify.
I'm sorry, I got worked up with the other thing. So I didn't want to run. Philip Bischoff was going to be running. Someone started a vicious campaign against, a whisper campaign against him, alleging all kinds of stuff. He was trying to get back with his wife, and they had just had some issues, and there was some vicious rumors being spread, and he couldn't take it. It was his family, was going through it, and it was some very vicious stuff, and it just wasn't fair. My intention was not to run, and I didn't want to run. But I cannot, in good conscience, allow someone that has continually lied. This man has continually lied to the conservatives of this county, and I can't, in good conscience, not run.
Thank you. And this next question, Mr. Thrasher will take it first. Our nation is working its way through a debate about police violence and its impact on the Black community especially. We've seen over the past couple of weeks police aggression directed toward peaceful protesters in other communities. Kentucky has a law, KRS 15520, commonly called the Police Bill of Rights, that codifies investigations of complaints of misconduct and in some ways affords officers an extra level of protection. Does the legislature need to review this law or consider other measures to address the state of policing here in Kentucky?
I think there's a lot of things that need to be looked at. I think when we have most of our counties are rural counties. We only have two metro. One's metro, one's urban. Fayette and then you have metro and local. I think those two counties are differentiate from the rest of the counties, and I think we do need to address some things in terms of police conduct, but I think right now the local levels of most 118 other counties are doing a good job at doing it themselves. But I think in terms of the bigger counties, I think, yeah, we need to address them.
And Representative Mccoy?
Yes, sir. We're already looking at it. Actually, last week in Judiciary Committee, we changed the agenda, and we had the ACLU, Black Lives Matter folks came to talk to us. We had Attorney General Cameron come and talk to us. And last year during the session, and actually it's been going on a couple sessions now, there's been a push, and it's interesting, from the business community to really fundamentally change criminal justice system. And in our bail, and how many people are in jail, are they overcrowded? And it's a workforce development issue. But the sort of interesting twist on it that we were unfortunate to learn is the disparate impact. Racially neutral laws, even being applied in a racially neutral way, a lot of them end up having a disparate impact on our brown and black communities. And that's a concern. If we're going to get businesses to move to this state so that we can keep growing this economy and getting people back to work, we have got to do something about that. So, and you mentioned the Police Officers' Bill of Rights. That actually came up last week. That was one of the things that was a recommendation that gets looked at. And I think Senator Westerfield has said now, here is a long list that over this summer during this interim period, the Judiciary Committee at least is going to walk through, and the Police Officers' Bill of Rights was one of those things.
Thank you. Switching gears a little bit, but still sticking with current events. We are living through the worst pandemic in a century. Do you support the steps taken by Governor Andy Beshear to limit the spread of the novel coronavirus in Kentucky? Are there particular aspects with which you agree or disagree with the state's approach? And it would be Representative McCoy will be answering this question.
Thank you. So first, let's back up. As the governor of the state, he actually does not have any power to do anything about a pandemic. He has power because the legislature in 1998, I think, the one we lived here, passed KRS 39A.100, which was an Emergency Powers Act that gave the governor the limited ability to act when various things occur. So arguably, the pandemic fits within that. Let's just assume it does. I really think his initial steps were dead on. Nobody knew what we were dealing with. We knew it was bad. We knew hospitals could get overrun. Italy was collapsing at the time. And for the first 2 weeks, I have no problem with what happened. But then we started doing something. We started talking about essential versus non-essential. And I would have preferred the conversation to be what's safe versus not safe. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me that all of these small business owners out there were forced to just shut down completely. When maybe, for example, at a dog groomer, why could a dog groomer not have been open? Have you drive up in your car, call and say you're here, bring your dog out, i.e. the things we're doing right now. Same with the clothing stores. So I would rather have seen the government get out of the way, turn to the business community and say, all right guys, what do you think you can do? Show me that it's going to be safe, and let's take those steps. And you know, that's kind of what happened down in Tennessee. And it's very fascinating. If you look at the rates in Tennessee, they have way more cases than we do, but their death rate's lower. And I don't even mean lower when you equalize it for population. There's a lot more population. It's just flat lower. And the reason is private business did what needed to be done. But some of the non-risk people, the 20 to 40-year-olds, their rates are through the roof, but nobody's sick. So they were able to keep that economy going. And unfortunately, I think we've shut ours down for way too long.
Governor Beshear is out of control. He is basically, and he started this before the House leadership left, abandoned Frankfurt, and cleared out. They basically have let Governor Beshear take these actions. So it's incredulous for Mr. McCoy to come off and say that, oh, it's the governor has no power. But before these people left, before he claims to be in leadership. Well, the leadership of the House, the Senate passed the Born Alive Act, and they could have taken action against the Born Alive Act and the veto, but yet they left it in the orders of the day box after the Senate passed it. You know how many abortions have been going on because the lack of Mr. McCoy's action? He wants to take credit for leadership. That's fine, but I want him to be accountable for all the babies that have been murdered since Mr. McCoy abandoned Frankfurt and left Andy Beshear up there to go crazy. You guys left Frankfurt. You are the one that took SB 2 or was it SB 9, Senate Bill 9. I'm sorry, and you guys basically left, and you could have overridden a veto. Now we are stuck with that until the next year, and there's going to be murders of babies, and you guys did not take action, and you know it. And if you want to take advantage, if you want to say that you're part of leadership, then you're going to have to take responsibility for it, Chad. Because you know what? You didn't take action, and you know you didn't take action. And another thing, you never addressed anything of the half-truths. Name one thing in here specifically, my opening, that was untrue. You cannot tell me there was one thing untrue. You did raise 41 new taxes. You did double the fees at the county clerk's office. You did attempt to raise the gas tax, double vehicle registration fees twice.
Time.
You did vote against Untitled Trust for schools.
Would you like to rebut? I'd love to rebut that. I hope folks see the difference between an internet troll that just wants to spout off stuff and somebody who's actually trying to make Kentucky a better state. Let me just quickly address Senate Bill 9. Senate Bill 9 is not a bill that's going to save any lives. What really would have saved lives was House Bill 415, which was the one that gave the Attorney General the power to shut down the abortion clinics, to go in and get an injunction. And that was the real goal of trying to get passed. This Born Alive bill, you know how many times that's happened in Kentucky? 0. So go back to, is it solving a real problem? Nope. It's just something to rile people up. But meanwhile, the real leadership was actually trying to stop abortions and save babies. So, a lot of people on the internet want to spew off things that aren't true. That's the truth.
You still didn't address any of the things that you said were untrue to begin with. And as for SB 9 not being a problem, that's fine. But why did you not stop Bashir? You guys were there when Bashir already was keeping that abortion clinic open after he closed things. Are you not going to, if you're you want to assume leadership responsibilities and you should be accountable for what you've done. You have let Andy Bashir keep abortion clinics open during a pandemic. That you are the one saying that it should have been closed. If it's supposed to be closed, if you're really fighting for right to life, that's what you should have been fighting for, sir. It's just like, if you can't take leadership position and not take the responsibility for what you've done.
Thank you. The next question. We're going to stick with some questions about what we're going through right now with the virus. The virus has impacted us in many ways, both in our personal and our public health, but also our economic health. In April, the unemployment rate here in Nelson County was over 19%. That's higher than any point since at least 1990. That's just as far back as I have records of. What can or should the legislature do to address this issue specifically? And I believe this question goes first to Mr. Thrasher.
Well, this goes back to Governor Bashir's actions. Some people call him COVID Andy, lockdown Andy, shutdown Andy. Mr. Mccoy likes to talk about being in leadership, but Andy can shut all this stuff down before you left, sir. And the state legislature, the House of Representatives, that you take credit for being a leader of, they abandoned these owners, these small business owners, sir. You abandoned them for Mr. Bashir's actions. So you can't come back and now criticize Governor Bashir for his actions because it's you, sir, and the other and Speaker Osborne and David Meade that failed to take action. You guys had the ability. You have a supermajority. We gave you guys a supermajority to veto any of these bills that you could have overridden his veto. But did you take any emergency actions to stop his emergency actions? You did not, sir. So you can't take credit for saying, you can't on one hand say Governor Bashir, he's closing businesses that shouldn't be closed. You had the ability to stop that. You know you did. That's what the House leadership, we put you there for. We've given you, the people, the Republicans of Nelson County have put you in there to be a conservative. You have not shown us that you're a conservative, sir. You may call us trolls. You may say that there's only 10 people. You've never even been to a Republican committee meeting, even before I was chairman. You have never in the history of Nelson County Republican Party been to a Republican Party committee meeting. And you know that. I checked with Robert Augustine, the chairman before. You've never shown up. Everyone knows that there was more than 10 people. There's 40 people on the county committee. Those people are elected every 4 years, sir. You would know that if you were involved. Those people were elected. There's 65 people that can be elected. There was 40 people that were moved over to the executive committee. That's the largest executive committee in this state of any Republican Party. For you to say it's a closed-off thing, none of those people were friends of mine 2 years ago, sir.
Time.
So I find you to be very disingenuous. I was not done, sir. I was not done, sir.
Mr. Thrasher, that's going to be time.
Forrest, I think the question is, what can and should the legislature do, given the massive unemployment that we've got? First and foremost, we've got to get the businesses back open. And there's a real unintended consequence, and I hate that phrase, it always comes up in Frankfurt. But with the federal money that's coming in on the unemployment right now, there's a real disincentive for people to come back to work. I mean, it's just a simple fact of the matter, especially medical personnel, who can now, with the expanded powers the federal government has given them, they can just say, I'm scared, I don't want to work, and that gets to count. So they're making state unemployment plus $600 a week. That ends up being $28, $29 an hour to stay home. Why would I want to come back to work? So things that we did do before we left Frankfurt, and I hope everybody remembers, under the Constitution, we're not allowed to be in session after April 15th. So any executive orders that happened after April 15th, there's not a darn thing the legislature can do about it. Before that, though, we passed 2 COVID bills and specifically gave all of our restaurants, and quite frankly, this saved them, the ability to do curbside and food and drink. We opened it up. We opened up the manufacturing of PPE. We offered immunity for folks so that they would come out and do PPE. We expanded a little bit on the time frames for unemployment so that you didn't have to wait the 7 days. We saw it was collapsing around us. Now here's going to be the bigger issue though about what the state needs to do, and that's what we're going to do with our budget. Kentucky's got a balanced budget amendment, that's part of our Constitution. Right now, the current year we're in, 2020, we budgeted 2 years ago. We're coming nowhere near its numbers, let alone the budget we did for next year. And I say year instead of biennial. We only did a 1-year budget this time, knowing that we were facing a real tough road over.
We are $54.5 billion in debt. That's around $12,600 for every man, woman, and child in this state. We do not have a revenue problem. We have a spending problem that you have not addressed in any of the 4 years you've been there. All you have done is consistently tax the people. You claim to lower the taxes, which you've never, you continue to say that you lower all the taxes. You have not, sir. You have raised 41 new taxes. The income tax that you say was an across-the-board cut was not an across-the-board cut because the lower interest, there was 2% and 4% and 5%. If you're paying 2% before and now they're paying 5%, how is that a tax cut, sir?
It's real quick. It's a tax cut because he doesn't read all the bills. House Bill 354 from the 2019 session came back. Our goal was to make sure no one's income tax went up and no one's income tax went up. The family credit was expanded. Anybody who was at the poverty level got cash back. So look, it was the goal, it was the plan, and we did everything possible to make it happen, and it worked.
Okay. I promise I have questions to address
Yes.
this later on. But the original intent of my question that I just asked was what needs to be done going forward. So after this next election, in the next session, if you haven't, I would like to extend each of you another 30 seconds to say what is it that the state can do going forward, not what has been done in the past. What can be done going forward by the legislature to deal with the rate of unemployment that is probably going to stick around for some time. And Mr. Thrasher, I'll put it back to you for that.
Moving forward, the best thing we can do is get this state to work again. The House leadership needs to call out Andy Beshear and say, let's get back to work. Sweden did not close down. They have a 39, their death rate is around 39 per every 100,000. Our death rate is around 30 for every 100,000. I don't mean to diminish anyone's life, but we have shut down our economy. People are depressed. There's anxiety. People are suicidal over this. There's a lot of issues.
So I think going forward, we've got to get people back to work. And how do we do that? You get government out of the way. Governor Bevin started the red tape reduction. We have followed up on that. And I think what you do here is we're going to have to take a hard look at KRS 39A100. The governor shouldn't be able to put an executive order into place and then it just lasts indefinitely. I think there needs to be, and a lot of states have this, they'll have an executive order review committee or some other way that even though the legislature's not in session, that these things can still be held in check. So we've already got legislation drafted to do just that.
Well, that segues in nicely with my next question was, and this will be to you, Representative Coy. Do you favor limiting a governor's authority to declare a state of emergency? If so, how do you balance the limits, any limits that you place with the flexibility for the executive branch to respond to an unplanned or unforeseen circumstance?
Absolutely do not favor limiting his ability to call one or to say there is one. But we've then got to put a check and balance on, okay, how long does it last? So like I was saying, here's the problem we've got in Kentucky. We're a part-time legislature and we're only in session until April 15th on an even number year, March 31st on an odd number year. So what do we do in June when there's something, or July, or August? So one of the proposals we had this past session, I'd love to see it come back up and get some traction, was maybe we amend the Constitution to say the legislature can save days, no more days. It's only going to be a 60-day session or a 30-day session. But you can get your work done and get back home, save the taxpayers some money, put those days in the bank, and then if something comes up, the legislature could come back in and help deal with it. Along those same lines is the thought of this review committee that would be made up of legislators and other people in the community to say, all right, Governor, from now on, an executive order only lasts for 14 days. And if you want to renew it, you have to come and explain why, what's going on, and prove some evidence to this committee, and then it could be renewed that sort of way. So I think you're going to see a lot of those sorts of checks and balances. But we can't just say, no, the governor doesn't have that power. None of us sitting here a year ago ever thought we'd be sitting here right now. So, you know, the unexpected, we have to have government flexibility here.
And Mr. Thrasher.
Yes, so what Mr. McCoy is failing to talk about is the House leadership's complete failure to even say anything I wrote a letter to the Speaker and the entire leadership, the House leadership, David Meade, Speaker Pro Tem Chad, and I asked them, you know, why don't you take some action to at least call out the governor on this? They never even responded. And clearly they're not responding, they're not standing up. They may not have to be in session to take action, because you know what? There's a bully pulpit. Chad is nowhere to be found, especially on Facebook. He shut his Facebook page down last year because of ethics violations. He goes on the Facebook page. That's why he shut his official Facebook page down. He's not on Facebook because he was on there opening up an illegal bottle of booze, and you know, his law firm went on there. He locked his Twitter account. You have to ask permission to join his Twitter account. You have to ask permission to join his Instagram account, and he has no presence on Facebook. So he would know how people are feeling. He likes to talk about local. He can't even get involved in what people are seeing. So when he talks about internet trolls, how are you seeing who's an internet troll when you're not even on Facebook because of your ethics violations? That's what I want to know, because I'll tell you right now, you're the one that should have been calling out Andy Beshear. Just because you're not in session, sir, doesn't mean you don't have power. If you're in House leadership, that is your job. Take some leadership, call the governor, say, Governor, I'm upset about this. Why don't you... You have not said anything publicly on this, sir. You have not made any statements on this until tonight. If you want to be a leader, if you want to claim that you're a leader and be in leadership, that's leadership, sir.
I need to respond to something.
Go ahead.
I am not going to sit here and let this person who has the worst record in the world out there doing all kinds of stuff, and we've all seen the same, I'm not going to go into it, try to take the moral high ground on me. I'm an attorney. My ethical rules are so far beyond the legislator's ethical rules, and I want to be very clear. I'm AV preeminent rating. It's an ethical standard. It's the highest you can get. If Don Thrasher thinks I violated ethical rules, then why hasn't he turned me in? And why haven't I gotten in trouble for it? The fact of the matter is, he is simply telling lies to rile people up.
Why did you close your Facebook account?
I got rid of my Facebook because people were trying to Facebook message me, and I don't have it on my phone. And so I didn't want to miss any constituent that was calling me. That's why they call me in my law office. They call me.
So do you deny opening up, having a video 3 days before?
Don, you got it on your website, so you know it's
3 days before.
There's nothing unethical about it.
Let me speak.
What? Okay.
You
Real quick.
deny 3 days before you.
All right, let's hold on. It's time. We're going to move on to the next
Well,
question.
I want to address this, and I'll keep addressing it because he's just questioned my character, and I want. I'm speaking, sir. I'm speaking. So here's the truth, okay? I gave him enough, and I have the emails to prove it. And you guys know that I keep track of the emails, and I'll be more than happy to send them to you. And this is the truth. I sent an email to every member of the House every Republican House member. I outlined how he has violated ethics violations. I outlined everything on Twitter that he's done with his law firm by promoting himself and using his office to basically use his office for public gain. Then he illegally took graph gift from and put it on his website. I emailed every single Republican in the House, and I said, look, ask Mr. Mccoy to please just stop this. Ask him to come publicly forward, just come clean about this, and we'll all move on. I gave him a chance. Over and over again, I have given him a chance to try and do this. So I can assure you it's true, and I'll be more than happy to send you the emails. And it's all the LRC.
Okay, time. We're gonna pull control here. and we're going to get back to a timed question debate.
We're going to move on to the next topic. Each county, and this has to do with the election, and I've lost track. Who's up on this question?
I believe you're Don would be the first one.
So Mr. Thatcher, each county will have only one in-person polling place on election day. And election officials are asking people to vote by mail. I think you've publicly voiced opposition to mail-in voting, and you even went so far as to call a postcard advising voters of how to obtain a mail-in ballot as, quote, voter suppression. Can each of you share your views on how this primary election is being handled in this regard? And what about the November general election?
Okay, so I was opposed and still am opposed to only having one precinct in this county. I'm not opposed to older people, if they want to use mail-in balloting, that's fine. But I believe that the postcard from the state was misleading because it only put you can vote in person on one side at the very, very bottom, very fine print. That I think was misleading. When you put vote by mail, you call this number on the front, and then you only have a small amount at the bottom. I think that's an issue, and I think they need to stop doing that. But when you have people out in Chaplin that are older and they have a fear of mail-in voting, and I think it situationally disenfranchises them. When you have older people in New Haven, they don't think that their vote's going to count. You can't. When there's a mindset of always just going and voting and thinking, well, mail-in ballots, get lost in the mail. There's all kinds of stuff, people hear. Trying to convince them to vote. I don't want them to not vote just because they think that their mail-in ballot's not going to count. So why take away, if we're able to go to conduct business pretty much the way we are, we've been told for 60 days, or the last 60 to 90 days by Governor Beshear, that don't go to big places, don't look around a lot of people. And then these older people are being told, go to one big place, and everybody's going to come together and go to one big place. It's very contradictory, and it's a lot more to go into, but obviously I don't have time.
And Representative Mccoy.
Thanks, sir. So first, let's make a distinction. Mail-in voting versus absentee voting by mail. I am absolutely against mail-in voting. Mail-in voting is where just blank ballots go out to everybody who's been registered. And one of the problems we've had in Kentucky is the former Secretary of State, London Grimes, wouldn't clean the rolls. So we know we've got over 100,000 people who are registered to vote that are dead or have moved. We don't make you unregister, so to speak, if you were to leave the state. So absentee ballot, though, this is what Secretary Adams recommends we do. He is a Harvard lawyer, election lawyer, Republican. With that absentee process, you've got to prove you're who you are. You've got to have your address, your social security number, your date of birth, and your driver's license number. At that point, the ballot will be sent to you. So there's some security there, and I like that. I would also, though, I think it's ridiculous that we've only got the one place. The reality is the governor's now called out the National Guard to help with all elections. Okay, then why aren't they being polling officers, and let's just open back up? People have a constitutional right to show up and vote. And quite frankly, people want to. We know the risks. We're wearing the masks. We're going to Walmart. Why can't we show up and vote? So I hope by the November election, I'll be honest, I think this election is going to have problems. There are so many folks that are telling me, oh, but I'll vote on the 23rd. Folks out there, don't wait. Go get your absentee ballot, make an appointment to vote in person, send it in. Because if we try to have 45,000 in Nelson County and show up at the fairgrounds, you're not going to get to vote. And that would be horrible.
I'd like to follow up on that. You can address it because Representative McCoy, you made the distinction between absentee voting by mail and mail-in voting.
Yes.
But there are states that do have mail-in voting. There were at least 5 of them that were vote by mail before all this. When that's where all registered voters receive a ballot by mail. Are those states elections less secure, or are they less trustworthy, or is there some difference between that doesn't make it right for Kentucky that makes it right for those states?
Yeah, the difference is whether or not you have to unregister or deregister, and whether or not you're cleaning the rolls as you go, so to speak. And I mean, regardless of what side you're on, Republican or Democrat, it is true. We've just got folks on our rolls right now that don't live here anymore. So sending a blank ballot out, and I'll give you an example. The little cards that Secretary Adams has sent out, I know people that have gotten 10 at their house for people that lived there 15 years ago. Had this been a mail-in vote, they would have gotten 10 actual ballots and would have been able to check the box and send it in. And that's what we can't have. That's voter fraud.
Yes, Mr. Basher.
First off, it wasn't Secretary Adams that sent those, that came from the State Board of Election, which he is only an ex officio member of and not a voting member. So when you say that the Secretary of State sent that out, that is an incorrect analysis. I want to point out again that consistently you have failed the voters of Nelson County. You could have taken action on this before you left for April 15th. You did not take any action. You want to claim leadership, but you're the one that stuck us with having only a governor that's only making us have one location. And there's only 2 or 3 counties, I believe Pike, Taylor, and either Grayson, maybe, I'm not for sure about the third one, but I believe there's only 3 that have more than one location. Those people, you could have fought for more than one spot. So it's very disingenuous for you to take leadership's credit for being a leader, but then on the flip side of that, you don't want to take responsibility for, well, we had to leave by April 15th. Yes, sir, but all this happened before April 15th, Mr. McCoy.
Thank you. One more. That's good for elections, I think. And this is going to seem a little off asking about it in a state race, but I have noticed that it has come up, and this is going to go to whose turn is it? It's Representative McCoy. The issue is about global warming or climate change, or however you term it. The question is the science conclusive that human activity has contributed to raising the level of CO2 in the Earth's atmosphere? And does state government have a role in curbing emissions to limit the effects of climate change?
Honestly, no scientists, haven't read any of the papers, so I don't know whether it's conclusive or not. The state doesn't really have a role as much as the federal government does with the Clean Air, Clean Water Acts. But I'll say this is one of those areas where I think people need to vote with their dollars. If it's important to you and your family, then vote accordingly. Don't use the products that you think are impacting you. If you don't want to shop at the big box store because their carbon footprint is better, then if that's what you believe, that's what you need to do. Because I think we've got to find a way to bring market forces to bear on any social issue, including global warming. And I know, people go back and forth. To me, it looks like, there's probably global warming going on. Humans are having some sort of impact on this planet. It'd be silly to think we're not having an impact on the planet. And I would love for us all what would it hurt to be environmentally friendly? Especially if we can do it with market forces, which will make it economically friendly as well.
This is a perfect example right here of what I'm talking about a disingenuous politician, a jury trial attorney that just flipped what he said in 2014. You guys have the video of it, and you asked the question, and both him and James Deweese answered the question. Yeah, we're for, we believe global warming, and we're for limiting it. Mr. McCoy in 2014 sent in to the Family Foundation a survey which he even said, yes, I agree with global warming, and we should limit emissions here in the state of Kentucky because of it. So now Mr. McCoy, this year, if you guys notice, he failed to do the voter survey because he knew this issue was going to come up. See, Mr. McCoy, and you guys can all look this up, Mr. McCoy is being very disingenuous here. And Forrest, I'm sure you remember in 2018, you asked this question, and both him and James Deweese answered affirmatively. So now for him to just kind of like squirm his way out, do this lawyerly, that's my problem. Look, I'm just a guy that wanted to have a say in his road name, and you know, it's gone to this. You know, I'm gonna be honest with you guys. You know, you just get tired of it. You just get tired of the lies. You get tired of government not standing up for what people believe in. And you don't change your mind, Chad. You don't do that. You know the thing with the ethics thing. You know what you said in 2018 about greenhouse and limiting it. You know what you said in the survey in 2018. Now you didn't even fill it out. There was 3 surveys, Mr. McCoy, that you didn't fill out. So for you to say that you're a strong conservative, I don't mind if you're a moderate Republican. That's fine. But just be honest.
Don, real quick as a follow-up, would you just answer the question though? And I'm going to give you 20 seconds. Is the science conclusive that human activity has contributed to the raising level of CO2 in the Earth's atmosphere? And does state government have a role in curbing emissions to limit the effects of climate change?
I don't believe the state government should limit, based on the evidence. I think that there is a continual climate change, that there's been no conclusive evidence. I know they like to say that there's a general consensus, but then you have these outliers, scientists. So I'm always a doubting Thomas. I'm a bit of a skeptic. So I don't think we should start limiting our emissions, because first off, China's not going to, India's not going to, and they're way bigger polluters than the United States, especially Kentucky.
That's tough.
So I just what?
This question is going to be to Mr. Thrasher.
Okay. Yep.
And we're going to go back to taxes. I know you guys were wanting to talk about taxes. I told you we'd get that. On the topic of taxes, Mr. Thrasher has stated his opposition to sales tax on some services that were passed through the legislature while you were there, Representative McCoy. Some opponents say these taxes fall hardest on citizens who can least afford them. The legislature has also reduced the state income tax rate. How can the state fund education, pensions, corrections, and all of the different functions of government and continue to be stable? If your answer is to cut spending, I'd like to know what would you cut? Specifics, please. If you think new sources of revenue are needed, where should that money come from? And I appreciate specifics on that as well. And it's to you, Mr. Thrasher.
So let's address the pension issue first. There are holes in this bag. The pension bag has holes. All right. You have a trustee system where these poor people, these people that these government workers, when you have a pension system that you have these trustees that determine where the money goes, and you have the wrong numbers, the actuarial numbers are coming back. What they do is, my understanding is they take the best year of what the returns are, rate of returns, and then they project that out, and they're trying to hide it from the actuarials. Mr. McCoy says that he is for transparency, and he's fighting for open government. But as you guys know, Mike Harmon tried to get all these records through open records requests. He was denied. Finally, he took them to court. They came back and they're all blacked out. Half the stuff is redacted. There is no transparency. So in terms of pensions, I think we need to address the holes in that bag, okay? And in order to address the holes, we need to have transparency from the retirement board. These trustees, we don't know. When you black out all of the information, we can't make a reasonable analysis. So that's one of the ways. For gas tax, I don't think we need to make a gas tax. There was a survey done, a UK study done, that says if we had open bidding, in reasonable competitive bidding the way it should be, we would save $3 to $5 billion for roads. But the way the highway contractor system is set up in Kentucky, the little guy is getting screwed over. Mr. McCoy takes a lot of money from the Highway Contractors Association, so he's not going to go after them. So we have these things like this. They may seem small, but when you add that up, it becomes a lot of money.
Representative McCoy.
We are a state with a lot of needs and not a lot of needs. We have a lot of folks that don't have any income at all. And what you have seen is the Republican Party over the last 4 years really try to modify our tax structure to bring businesses in. But your question was, can we get by with just cutting, or do we need new revenue? I think there are some new sources of revenue for sure out there. Expanded gambling, for one, I think would bring revenue into the state and we could use it. I also think there is some things that we could continue to do. The Republican tax modernization, what our goal was to bring down the income tax, expand the base on the sales tax, and now we got to do step 3. This is a 220-page book of tax expenditures. This is literally government work that's been put in place over the last 95 years, and everything needs to be put on the table. The sacred cows need to be killed, and we've got to start going, what can we do here to get rid of some of this? It's politically tough. A lot of folks don't want to touch any of this because there's some little special interest group out there somewhere or another that's getting a tax break, that needs to keep their tax break. But the reality is that was the goal when that work needed.
Thank you. And you brought something up, and I know that we're running short on time.
Don't hit everybody.
Oh, but go ahead.
So, to address, I think Forrest had asked about the 41 new taxes and how it's affected the average person. I'll tell you how it's affected the average person. People now have to, every time they go to a gym, for a year, they have a sign up that says, every time you have to go to the gym, you now have to pay a tax. Every time you have to go to the veterinarian, I had to put my dog down back in December, back to Christmas. It was actually Christmas Day. There was actually a service charge on there, $35, but I didn't mind the extra service charge for it being Christmas, but when I did see the service tax on there, or the new service tax, I just, thought to myself, Mr. McCoy had said, these are all option taxes. Well, I didn't have an option to put my dog down on Christmas Day, Chad, and I know you like to say that those 41 taxes are options for people, but you know what? When a working person only has one car, and they have to take their car into a mechanic shop, that is not an option whether or not they're going to get it fixed.
The good news is we reduced the income tax by 17%. The sales tax is at 6%, and it did get expanded. There's no doubt about that. And you're going to see that probably happen even more. The reason that's a good thing to do, and I will agree, the math is probably recessive math. I mean, there's no way around that. But by moving to consumption versus productivity, we're actually going to bring in out-of-state money. Think of all the people that come here for the burger trade. Now, when they buy something, they pick up their money too. So that's a good thing for our state. That's what Indiana does. That's what Tennessee does, and they've been kicking our butt for a long time.
But you know who that hurts the
Quickly,
most?
Don.
You know who that hurts the most? It hurts the older people and the younger people the most, Chad. The working people, the people that they can handle it. But the older people, they're the ones that are getting harmed by this. And you say it's making it equal for everybody, but it's hurting these people disproportionately. And this concessive drive that you have is hurting elderly people and the younger people disproportionately. And it's just not right.
All right, we'll move on.
Getting back onto sources of revenue, and I think Representative McCoy mentioned it, has to do with, when I find it in my notes here, has to do with, but the Senate has refused to take up any measures such as sports betting or even gaming in Kentucky, saying the revenue it will bring is not worth the problems associated with it. And I'd like to keep this at a minute, please, because I'm trying to get as much in here as I can. Yet many states around us, they're doing it already, and Kentucky money's being spent there. So, do you support such a move, and why or why not? Let's try to keep that in a minute.
Absolutely. This to me comes back to our liberties and limited government. I'm an adult. I ought to be able to do what I want to do as long as what I'm doing doesn't harm others. And I don't understand why the government's involved in that. Where all the people who are against it spend every weekend across the river donating to Indiana, and it drives me batty. We need to bring it back to Kentucky, keep that money here at home. I'm absolutely for all those revenue sources.
Mr. Thatcher.
So are you saying they're being hypocritical by doing that? Because you're accusing the conservative base, the people that you claim to be part of, you're just accuse them of being hypocritical by going over to Indiana instead of, if they're opposed to it, why would they be going to Indiana, sir?
Don, would you like to answer the question?
Yeah, I would. I think that there's a lot of issues with corruption that could bring. I think we need to look at a lot of things before we really consider doing that.
Right. And this is going to be my closing question, and bear with me here because this was not on the this was not on my list here, but it's something that was that ethics have been brought up, and I didn't want to revisit some things that have already been I felt aired. But if ethics are going to be brought up, I would just like to to ask. I think both of you questioned one another's ethics. I know that there was a flyer that went around to a lot of Republican households back how long ago?
November.
In November.
Yeah.
That was before you were a candidate, Mr. Thrasher. But I would just like for you to address that for a moment. Either your own, and I would like for you to speak on your own ethics rather than on the other on your opponents there. But I'd like for us to have at least 2 minutes each of you with a discussion on that, and I'll let Mr. Thrasher go.
Thank you. You know, in the United States, we have gotten to a point where we don't trust politicians, and you know I hear over and over again, you know, when I first said, "Oh, well, Chad lied to us about the gas tax," you know, I guess what he would call internet trolls, people would say, "Oh, well, he's just a politician. What do you expect?" Well, I expect better. And you know, I've made mistakes in my past. I've opened up and told you guys everything you know. People make mistakes 20 years ago, but you know, I haven't done it while I've been in government. You know, like Kelly Pulliam in 2018. You know, when we were going door to door, when he was going door to door, he was telling people that he was worked in the clerk's office for 17 years. You know, before I even said anything publicly about anything, I pulled him aside. I'm like, look, you know, you didn't work in the clerk's office. Just be honest. We gotta be better than that. The reason we're running against these people. That's why I told Kelly at the time. I said the reason why we're running against Dean Watts and these other people is because we gotta be better. You know, I've made mistakes. You know, it's but there's a redemption. You know, you try to redeem yourself. You know, you can continue to be a person that is, you know, not willing to take a stand for what's right. But, you know, at some point you say, I want to make a difference for the better. And that's what I'm trying to do. And, you know, whether you guys agree with me or not on my positions, I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, that's my position. It is what it is, but, you know, I'm not going to tell you one thing one day and then turn it around to something else the other day. I might, you know, say it the wrong way. I might get a little aggressive, a little assertive, but it's going to be honest. I'm not going to change my mind next week and just say I never said it. I'm going to admit to saying it.
And Representative McCoy?
Thank you. You know, I don't remember the year. It's like 1996. We have this thing called Bop Truck in Kentucky. Kentucky historically has had some of the dirtiest politicians out there. And the FBI came in the late 90s and swept through, and a whole bunch of bad stuff happened. What came out of that was Kentucky now has the strictest ethics laws for any legislator in the United States. We are constantly getting asked by people from outside Kentucky to come and talk about our ethics rules and how it works and how we can, you know, get the corruption out of it. And the way we boil it down is it's called the no cup of coffee rule. No one is allowed to even buy me a cup of coffee. If we were to go out to lunch, I'm buying my own. I'm not going to be influenced by anything or even come close to that line. And what's frustrating with that is even when I go out with friends, you know, I have to make sure I always pay for everything of myself and my family. And, you know, one of the ethical allegations that Mr. Thrasher likes to bring up was Derby Day. Well, I paid for Derby tickets for 6 people. So, I don't know if you know how much Derby tickets are, but they're more than a $9 bottle of champagne or whatever it was that we drank on the way. We had a driver, don't worry. We were really good at saying. So, I'm nowhere close to violating ethical rules, I'll be honest. That is the most serious thing to me. Because of my profession. As an attorney, you're only as good as your word. And I know people like to make fun of politicians and say that we do this or lawyers do that, but the reality is I can back it all up and show it to you. So our ethical rules are strong, they're good, I've never violated them, and I stand by
All right, that's the end of the questions for the evening, so we are going to move swiftly into closing statements. You will have 3 minutes for your closing statements, and per the flip from the beginning, Don, you'll be going first, and Chad, you'll be rounding us out.
Before I start my closing, I just want to say that Mr. McCoy just told you something about 6 derby tickets. I never said anything about 6 derby tickets. In fact, I'm going to be sending the email that I sent to every Republican in the House to Mr. Berkshire tonight, and I am going to show him, Matt Gordon, a copy of the video of him opening up a bottle of 2006 bottle of booze that you put on your official House representative Facebook page, where you said thank you to them for the Bardstown Bourbon Company. So you can also, you basically did not, you have used your Twitter account to promote your law firm and you by saying that you get a special look at legislation in order to entice clients to go with your company. I started the first stevia soda company in the United States. The first soda Thrasher beverage was called Z-Cola. At the time, stevia was not approved by the FDA, so I had the idea to market it as a carbonated dietary supplement. I fought the FDA, and in 2007, the FDA approved stevia, and my company had a head start on any competitors. I know what it's like to start a small business. I know what it's like for the little guy to fight big government. If elected, I pledge I will fight any and all tax increases. If we are truly conservative, we will cut the state budget before we put any further burden on taxpayers. I pledge to you there will be no stronger voice in Frankfurt for pro-life. God does not favor us when we allow the murder of innocent babies. I pledge to you there will be no stronger voice for the Second Amendment in Frankfurt than Don Thrasher. I go beyond Second Amendment. I'm pro-Second Amendment resolutions, unlike my opponent here who refused to support one. If citizens want their leaders to reassert the support for the Second Amendment, it is their job to do just that. We are living in a country where our schools have stopped teaching civics, stopped teaching kids to love this country and patriotism. The Pledge of Allegiance should not be controversial. Kids go to school now and have never had experience with prayer before school starting. Not only should we put in God we trust signs in schools, we should teach patriotism in the Constitution. We're living in difficult times where people are unsure of the future. But I leave you with a scripture from the book of Joshua. Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the law my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn from it from the right or to the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. Do not let the book of this law depart from your mouth. Meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful. Have I not commanded you, be strong and courageous? Do not be terrified. Be not discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you all for tuning in. Appreciate you taking the time, and I hope if anybody has additional questions, just reach out to me to follow up with anybody. You know, it's been an interesting 4 years serving as your state representative, and I was very fortunate to get into leadership very early on, and that has been eye-opening. And you know, the thing about this job is you get bombarded daily from a lot of different places and a lot of different viewpoints, and there's always some issue that needs to be dealt with. And I hope you see the choice that you have to make here today, on election day. Because elections have consequences. And the choice for you is, do you want somebody who's going to thoughtfully consider things, go through it. And look, you're probably not going to agree with me every day on everything. I guarantee you don't agree with your spouse every day on everything. You love him or her, you know, but the point is, I'm there doing a good job for us. We've got more road money coming in than we've ever gotten coming in. We've got a voice in Frankfurt like we've never had before. And I'm in a position to continue that for Nelson County. So I really look forward to getting your vote and going back up to Frankfurt.
All right, we would like to thank everybody for tuning in this evening. We would like to especially thank the two gentlemen, Chad McCoy and Don Thrasher, for coming in tonight. And under the circumstances, I know it was a little off and a little weird. I know it's the first time we've ever done a debate like this, but we wanted to make sure that the people got to hear the questions and both of you two answer them, and so that they are able to make the best decision possible for them and their families coming up on Election Day. We'd like to thank everybody at home for tuning in and expressing their thoughtfulness into voting. Voting is a huge right for everyone in this county, this community, this country, and we want you to use it well and remember it is powerful. I'd like to thank Forrest Berkshire, the editor of the Kentucky Standard, for joining us and speaking for the questions. We'd like to thank the PLG crew here. We have a lot of people behind the scenes here. Our production manager, John White, our employee, Evan. He's not our intern, used to be. And we'd like to just thank everybody and wish everybody well out there in the community, because we know things are, tensions are high, we know emotions are high, and the only thing that we can ask everybody is just